We're back to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Insightful Players series. You can go to insightfulplayer.com or also simplyg.com for the Simply G Media Network. And I'm always excited about Insightful Players because, again, Chrissy Carew does such a fantastic job teaming up with the NFL to find the greatest NFL players that are helping in the community and have just awesome stories. You can go to insightfulplayer.com and read the book and also learn about the stories of each of the players that are part of Insightful Player and much, much more. So I first want to welcome to the program my co-host, Jared. Jared, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest today.
I am, absolutely. I remember our guest, that just terrific career, and being able to watch him in the old New England Patriot uniform.
Oh yeah, I love that old uniform, and we can talk about that another time. But we have to be closet Patriots fans, especially for our flagship station in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're gonna get a lot of heat for that, Jarrett, for sure. But I want to welcome the program, the third time leading passer for the New England Patriots, all-star, and much, much more. Great and insightful player, Steve Grogan. Steve, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Absolutely, Steve. And again, it's a situation where you look at your career, but starting out, did you ever think that you were going to have that, be an NFL player and have such a career that you had?
I think I was like any other kid to dream of becoming a professional athlete. I actually enjoyed basketball in high school more than I did football, but I was better at football. I had a chance to go to Kansas State, and we weren't very good during that time period. So I wasn't real sure whether I'd get a chance at the NFL, and then the Patriots drafted me, and they already had 3 veteran quarterbacks, and I was told they were only keeping 2, and, things in life sometimes work out if you're prepared, and we had one of the veterans retired, and Jim Plunkett, who was a starter, got hurt, and I was the only guy left to stay there as the backup, and it took them 16 years until they finally figured out they made a mistake.
So that we really, Jared, go way into the story very quickly about Steve and how he got that opportunity, and I know, Jared, you have some interesting questions, especially about his childhood and stuff, right?
Well, I do. Growing up in Kansas, and one of the questions I was going to ask is, but Steve answered it already, was growing up in Kansas, how do you turn to football when basketball is the number one sport in the state of Kansas? He answered that for us. But Steve, what was it like growing up in Kansas with your parents? How involved were your mom and dad in your athletic endeavors and school endeavors? And what was that like for you?
It was a great time for me. I grew up in a small town, Ottawa, Kansas, had about 10,000 people, so you knew a lot of the people in town. We were about an hour southwest of Kansas City. We could hunt and fish all year. We could play our sports. There was a group of guys in my class that all loved sports and athletics and were good at it, and that made it even more enjoyable. We had a lot of success my senior year because of the group of athletes we had. My parents were very supportive. They're very involved in the community there in Ottawa, and my dad was a junior high school coach and later went on to do some coaching at the Ottawa University, small NAIA school there in town. So I grew up around sports and coaches and just loved the way things went in my youth. It was a great place to grow up.
Well, absolutely. Kansas is definitely a great place to grow up, and that's one of our flagship affiliates out there in Kansas City. And I always enjoyed traveling to Kansas as a professional wrestler, Steve. I wrestled in Wichita a lot, so I definitely traveled all the way through there, drove all the way from Pittsburgh to do the minor league circuit in Wichita and do TV on Friday nights. So
Wow.
that's just a little segue back to Kansas. And
You've been through the Flint Hills and going down into Wichita. It's A lot of people think it's a boring drive, but to me, it's beautiful. You can see forever.
Well, it is. It's gorgeous, and I really enjoyed Kansas, and I was wanting to start a wrestling promotion in there. I never had it, and a good friend of mine, Derek Stone, who's on radio somewhere else now, and we were both wrestlers, we had a dream of having a territory in Kansas, and we have good friends in Kansas City and also Omaha, Nebraska, so we understand our definite Midwest roots in that certain aspect. And do you think that ultimately growing up in an area like that kept you grounded going into to play college football and then also go on to the NFL, that those roots helped you in a lot of ways to stay grounded and keep persevering?
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I think probably staying grounded came more from my family than it would have from the community. I mean, there's guys in Kansas that grow up and go on to professional sports and make a lot of mistakes and are not well grounded, but I had great family support. I knew how to conduct myself. As I said, we weren't very good at Kansas State, so I learned about getting knocked on your rear end and getting back up and believing in yourself and continuing to compete. And I think all those things helped me once I got to the NFL and the New England Patriots.
Wow.
And Neil, you led us right into kind of the question that I was thinking of here. Neil brought up his professional wrestling. Maybe not so many role models that we want to have in the wrestling field. Sorry about that, Neil. But Steve, you were absolutely one of my role models growing up here in Pittsburgh, and I remember watching you play on Sundays, and I had your jersey, and you were one of my players that I was out there throwing the football, pretending to be. How important is it do you feel that it is to be a role model? It sounds like your parents were your role model for you, and you talked about staying grounded. How important is it to be that model for young people?
Oh, I think it's extremely important. And, you mentioned growing up in Pittsburgh. When I was in high school and college, Terry Bradshaw was having his great career in Pittsburgh, and I kind of admired the way he played quarterback. He was a tough guy, didn't back down from anybody, and then when I finally get to play against him, it was a thrill of a lifetime. But when I'm out in the community talking to people about role models, people are extremely concerned about professional athletes not being good role models, and there are some of them like that. But I try to tell them that 90% of the guys in professional sport are good people doing good things in the community. You just don't hear about it, and they may not be role models, so to speak, parents, teachers, police in the community, but what kids see on a daily basis, the people they're around on a daily basis, influence their behavior far more than anybody, whether it's an athlete or a movie star or a singer. They're influenced by their community and the people they come into contact with daily far more than these guys and gals they see on television. So it's important for everybody to be a good role model.
Exactly. And as parents, we see this, Jared, all the time. We talk to parents about it, that we have to be a model for them. And the way we act in front of our children is shaping them in so many ways. And kind of going back to your family again, Steve, what would you say, how do they really shape you in the best way, especially in modeling the correct behaviors at home to help you in that process of growing up to be a very successful adult and that formation? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think it's just the way they conducted themselves. As I said, they were very active in the community, whether it was being on the board at the hospital or doing something for the college there in town, raising money for them. My dad was very involved in Kiwanis Club. I was fortunate to have a stay-at-home mom when I was growing up. I think that was extremely important, to be able to leave the house with mom there and come home with mom there. Most kids don't get that opportunity nowadays, but just the way they, and not only them, but my aunts and uncles and grandparents, they all just did the right thing, and that influenced me tremendously to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Jared, and that's what we talk about all the time on our show, don't we?
You're correct, and so many of the players, all of the players, and Steve is our latest interview to really nail the details of almost the guiding principles that that we have or that we're hoping to have. And this is something that we started our show years ago, discussing this with parents. And Steve, you talked about your playing career at Kansas State, and the team was not as successful as the Kansas State team these days. And certainly the Patriots had some terrific years with you, but they weren't all terrific years. How important was it? I mean, we look at athletes and we tend to only see the success. How important was it to you to have both the success and face the challenges of being a professional athlete?
Well, there were some challenging times in my career. Went from starter to backup to starter to backup again, and then to starter again, and then had some injuries and had to go back to backing up. So, there were times when people thought I was the best thing in the world, and there were times people wished I was out of town. But back in my day, they didn't have free agency, so you had to play with the team that had your contract, and the Patriots kept me around, I think, because I did whatever I could to help the team win. If I was a backup, I tried to give the defense the best picture I could give them in practice to get them prepared. And I prepared myself to be ready to play in case I had to go in the game. And that opportunity came several times, and I was able to be successful when I did it. I didn't go stomp off in the corner and cry about it and ask to be traded. I did what they asked me to do.
Absolutely, and it's something that, again, goes back to your family background and teaching you to persevere through those times and understand that those things are going to happen. One of the things you talked about, especially that I've read in your bio, is talk about the importance of education. So when you were at Kansas State, you were definitely a student athlete, weren't you, Steve? That education was an important part of your life, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. My dad being a school teacher, and a lot of the family members were school teachers also. I knew that education was important, and I knew that athletics wouldn't last forever, and if you have an education, you've got a chance when the athletics are done. Again, that was a great example set by my folks. I was I made myself graduate in 4 years. I was honored to be an all Big 8 conference academic athlete for my junior and senior years. I just knew that studying and education was probably more important than playing football.
That's important, and then that keeps you going in a lot of ways to understanding being a student of the game to learn about football. So when we get back, we're going to go more Steve Grogan, insightful player, New England Patriot, and learn about, I guess, his whole career in New England and then life after football. Because, again, ultimately, especially at the time Steve played, the money wasn't there, so there really had to be a game plan afterwards. And we talked to a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers about this on our show, Washington Redskins, a lot of people that, again, life after football is a key component. And hopefully the players today learn from players like Steve. You're listening to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Insightful Players series, insightfulplayer.com, and also the Simply G Media Network. And we'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Insightful Players series. You can go to insightfulplayer.com for more information on Chrissy Carew and purchase the book and learn about, again, the assemblies that they offer with these fantastic NFL players. And as Jared has we've talked about, and we all every week get to see, Jared, these unbelievable, insightful players. It's just awesome, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we highlighted Steve's early life in his career, and now we're going to transition to what life looks like for an insightful player after the playing days have gone by.
Close, but I am, again, as a huge fan as well, Steve, and I remember the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of a situation in your career, and people would talk about which Steve Grogan would show up at times. So during your career, it wasn't always a bed of roses in your 16-year NFL career, and kind of describe it for our listeners out there that might have not seen you play, that at times you were just amazing, and at other times things just didn't go as well as you hoped. Am I correct?
That's extremely correct. Like I said, I came in here with a bunch of veteran quarterbacks, not expecting to make the team, and then when I did, I got a chance to play in New York down at Shea Stadium and against Joe Namath, which was a thrill to be on the same field with him. and I threw a touchdown pass in the fourth quarter because the young quarterback veteran that was wasn't playing very well. I threw a touchdown pass to Russ Francis, our great tight end, and the next day they activated Plunkett off the injured reserve and cut Neil Graff, and suddenly I was backing up Jim Plunkett. 2 weeks later, he got hurt. So halfway through my rookie year, I'm the starter, and I had some ability to run the football early in my career, and probably wasn't the best passer in the world. Definitely not the best passer in the world, and my running ability my first 3 or 4 years bought me time to learn the passing game, so that when I started having some knee problems in my 5th and 6th year, I was ready to transition my game to stay in the game as a pocket passer.
Interesting. And Jarrett, again, you were a fan of his, so it's kind of funny. Both of us were really good fans of his growing up in Pittsburgh. What did you admire about his game, Jarrett, that really impressed you?
Even as a youngster, I saw the dedication, and that's actually what I admired most about Steve and his career. And as I got older, he discussed the transition where he was he became the teacher, the mentor, and I remember seeing him with Tony Eason and on the sidelines and giving advice, being the teacher, being the coach of that. Another coach, and I admired that even when I got older and saw that. And Steve has highlighted what his background has done for them. He didn't walk off the field and he didn't go into the corner. He was there for his team and his teammates. And I think my question for Steve is, as your career went on and you saw that the transition from football to everyday life was going to take place, what skills kind of helped you make that transition?
I was fortunate enough to play 16 years. Most guys don't get that kind of time, and I knew that by the time I got done at 37 years old, the transition into the business world was going to be more difficult than if I was younger and hadn't played as long. But I loved playing football, and I was going to make it last as long as I could. So I guess when I got done, we talked about the education earlier. I mean, you learn leadership and working with different people, playing the game of football, but I didn't know a lot about business. I wasn't sure. There was no family business to go back to. So I started looking around at what I wanted to do, what I could do, what I had an ability to do, and I was smart enough to know that I had a lot of friends that were a lot smarter than me about business, and I started talking to some of them and getting their advice, and I wound up purchasing a sporting good business that had been here in Mansfield, Massachusetts for about 20 years and was on the market and having some troubles, and I bought it, and it's been 19 years, and we're still going strong.
That's fantastic, and you're taking a chance too, right, Steve? Again, your careers, you had a successful career, but then to purchase a business that you don't know if you're going to be able to revive it. So that's a challenge in itself. That
was a challenge, and I didn't, as I said, I didn't know a great deal about business. I knew a lot about sports, and so this kept me around sports. I had a lot of good people that had been here working for a long time that stayed and helped with the transition, and most of them are still here. So, I might not have known a lot about business, but I knew a lot about people, and I could tell the people I needed to have around me and the people I didn't, and it's worked out.
And Jarrett, we hear about this all the time, right? That, again, the transition of the players in the 70s and 80s already having an idea of where they're going to go in their career and taking that skill set, Jarrett, onto the football field, from the football field to the whatever career they decide afterwards.
Right, the boardroom, the schoolroom, the classroom. But here's what I take, and I hope our listeners are picking up on this too. Steve transitions from being the leader and the teammate in the life of football and going into the business world. I love what he said. Most of the people were still with us from the beginning. That says a lot. 16 years. There's not exactly loyalty. That shows loyalty. And what I hear from Steve is, as a businessman, he's a good leader. and an excellent teammate. Steve, would you say that that's probably you have a great deal of humility with you, so you may not necessarily agree with that. But how important is it as an insightful player, a business person, to be both the leader and be a great teammate?
Oh, it's extremely important, and again, it all goes back to the role model thing. If I'm working hard and doing the right things every day, then the people around me are going to see that example that I'm setting, and hopefully we'll do the same thing.
Absolutely. And you said it perfectly in that way. And through the business world, who taught you? Who were your role models in business? We talk about, how you grew up, and played for the Patriots, and you got to learn a little bit from Jim Plunkett, and you learned from all these different quarterbacks and great people that you admired in your career in the NFL. You have to have those role models in business as well. How did you learn the business game, jumping in after pretty much your whole life was football before that?
Well, again, I had some friends that I had developed over the years and met that were very successful business people, and we sat down, and when I decided I was thinking about buying the business, we sat down and discussed what the opportunities were, what the disadvantages were, and I took those people's advice and put in some of what my own thoughts were, and jumped in feet first and tried to make it work.
That's fantastic, and that's the key thing is, Jarrett, looking and surrounding yourself with the right people. One of our good friends, or my good friend and mentor, G.J. Reynolds, said that all the time. We've got to surround ourselves with the right people in business and in life, and it's who we loaf with, who we learn from, and who we decide to hang out with, Jarrett, that really forms us. It formed him in his family, Steve's family. Then later in life, when he was ready for his career in business, he surrounded himself with the right people to be successful in business, Jarrett.
Yeah, and having that plan, again, the education, coming back to that, facing adversity, and so many times, we've spoken to parents, and we advise them, and we talk to them about you do need to let your children face adversity. We can't protect them from everything, and we need to let them fail. There needs to be an element of failure, but being there as parents to say, now this is how we bounce back. And here we hear that from Steve's story, being able to be resilient. We talk about that so much, and here we are having another story of a life of resiliency.
Absolutely, and I know Jarrett was thinking about a question on that, so I'll jump right into a question that my new mentor, another business mentor, Coach Carew, really has been able to help me in my business since I've known her, to really develop more focus in what I'm trying to do. What does it mean, Steve, for you to be an insightful player? It's fantastic that we're finally highlighting players' careers off the field and what they do to help others in so many ways, to work with children. What does it mean for you to be an insightful player, Steve?
It's pretty special. I've always tried to, as my parents taught me, to stay involved in the community. I'm involved with Easter Seals in Massachusetts, done things for the local YMCA, Rentham State School for the mentally handicapped. It just goes on and on. It's important to give back to the community when you've had a chance to be successful at whatever it is you do. It's almost, to me, it's almost the most important thing is to give something back to the people around you, and I've always tried to do that, and to be an insightful player. Chrissy asked me to be one of them, talk to her for her book. I can tell she's doing this thing all for the right reasons, and that's why I'm happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And Steve, if you got a chance to, I'll have to sometimes forward you some of those podcast interviews with the other insightful players. What we're seeing from the younger players in the generation of, I guess, the 2000s, unbelievable people that Chrissy has chosen to be insightful players. They truly know about giving back. They know about that giving portion of things, Jarrett. And you can share about that for a second, Jarrett, really quickly. The Insightful Player Series and the way where what makes it different from the other athletes we've interviewed, Jarrett, or celebrities and stuff?
It's such an easy answer. It's an all-star team of men who are, again, providing experience and teaching and coaching and mentoring, but it's an all-star team of community leaders and community service-oriented people. That's the way I look at the Insightful Players.
That's a great point. And okay, Steve, where can we find information on you and learn more about you so that we can check out your business and I guess other things that are going on with Steve?
Well, I don't go around publishing what's going on with me very often, so you might be able to look something up on the internet. We have a website for the business. It's GroganMarciano.com. Right now our website's under construction, so you may not get much information there, but should be up and running here before too long. Other than that, I'm just living my life, trying to do the right thing the best that I can every day, and if people hear about it, great. If they don't, it's not a big deal.
So you're kind of in the shadows now after the career, and it kind of shows your career and in life. You chose to be in business now, and you're still out there helping in the community, but ultimately you want to be in the background, and that shows great humility, and it shows, especially an unbelievable career that you've had, that ultimately the spotlight's not what you're looking for at this time in your career. You're looking at how I can give back, how I can help others, and how I can transform society. So I really commend you about that, Steve. That's fantastic.
Well, I've never forgotten that the success I've had was due in part to a lot of people, whether it was my parents or my teammates, and now in business, people that work for me. I wouldn't be successful without a lot of other people doing their jobs and setting a good example. So I'm just trying to do the same thing for others.
All right, Steve. Well, I appreciate you coming by. I'd love to have you back at a time to catch up on the career, more about football and life as well. And best of luck to you and your business. And I'm not going to say go Pats, but I'm going to say definitely go Steve Grogan. And I'm an even a bigger fan after getting to talk to you. So thanks for coming by.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I enjoyed visiting with you guys.
All right, take care, Steve. See ya. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to the Total Tutor Show powered by the Insightful Player Series, and we'll be back in just a moment.